Good evening. I hereby call to order the February 24th, 2021 meeting of the Gaithersburg Historic District Commission. For the record, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being remotely telecast, so please bear with any of the bumps in the road that we encounter. For our roll call, please answer present when I call your name. Community Planning Manager Greg Mann.
Present.
Deputy City Attorney Frank Johnson.
Present.
Planner 2 Chris Berger.
Present.
Commissioner Mary Jo LaFrance.
Present.
Commissioner Mark Feinstein.
Present.
Commissioner Rudy Morgan.
Present.
Commissioner and Vice Chairman John Roddy.
Present.
And myself, Commissioner and Chairman Dean Mattola says present. We have a quorum, and Commissioner Morgan's role tonight is as a full commissioner. Next is our preliminary statement, which is as follows. This commission is empowered to meet and act under Article 12 of the City Code of Gaithersburg. The technical qualifications of the staff of this commission and the members of the commission are on file with the City of Gaithersburg, are available on request to any applicant, and are hereby made a part of the legal record of each and every application heard today. Each application heard today is considered on its own merits and is not to be considered as establishing precedent for any other applications. Okay, does anyone have any conflicts of interest that they want to declare for any of the applications that are being heard tonight? Yes, Mary Jo.
Not truly a conflict of interest. I would just like to let everybody know that Mr. Wessel and I live in the same historic district, and he is my neighbor.
Okay, wonderful. Anyone else? Okay, and I see in here no one. Okay, very good. Next is we have one set of minutes, which is from the January 27th, 2021 meeting. Does any commissioner have any corrections or additions to the minutes? If so, please raise your hand and verbally indicate so. And I see no, but I have three that I want to put in, Chris. I can pretty much, if you have the minutes available, I can tell you where they are. On page 3, the fourth paragraph down.
I don't have access to the.
I can read it to you then.
Yeah, if you could just go through them.
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll tell you. So like I said, page 3, fourth one down, it says, starts out with, it says, Chair Ventola suggests that proposed equipment closures are shifted to the south and further away from the intersection. You also suggested, and it says the larger enclosure is located at the top of the smaller enclosure. Can you please just rewrite that statement and simply say, he also suggested switching the larger and smaller units so the larger one is further away from the intersection. Next then is on page 8. It looks like it is the second paragraph from the bottom. And very simply, on maybe the third sentence down, midway, it starts with the sentence, he said the interior photos did not show much flame damage and just flame damage. So what I'd like to do is strike the last 4 words in there and just simply say, he said the interior photos did not show much flame damage. In basement, mostly smoke damage, and the main floor, it looks like it has no damage. Kindly pull up, when you rewrite this, the actual video, because I think the wording on this particular item is possibly going to be important. So you don't have to quote me directly, but I want to have clarity on what the intent of what I said was. And then last, on that same paragraph, which is second from the bottom on page 8, it says, as an example of an older building in which a rear addition was added, please confirm this, but I think I said an older building in which a large rear addition was added. Now that's important again for tonight's issue. I want to make sure that that's in the record. Then I think that, let's see here. Okay, I think that's it. Those are the 3. So therefore, does anybody have any issues other than what I just mentioned? I'm seeing here no one. Okay, so then I make a motion. I'm sorry. Yes, Mary Jo.
Just really quick, Dean, I want to remind you, I didn't see it in the minutes that you had also suggested and made mention, and it could have been the meeting before last month, so I apologize if I'm incorrect, that the applicant should consider building a separate building on the back lot of the property that would be appropriate to house what he is asking for, and that should be included in the minutes.
That's a good suggestion. Chris, I guess if that was part of that conversation from
Yes.
last month, we could add that in. If it was from the prior month, my guess is I said it both months. I think I brought it out the first time and I probably reiterated it last month, but whatever I said last month, if you could add that, that'd be great. I agree. Thank you so much, Mary Jo. All right, so I make a motion to adopt the minutes as amended. Do I have a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, so that would be 5-0 ayes. Okay, motion passes. Minutes were adopted. Okay, next then is we have our first up is the Historic Area Work Permit to review, which is also known as the HAWP. And please note, members of the public, you will be invited to participate. And so it's going to be HIST-8787-2021, front porch expansion and alteration at 102 Chestnut Street in the R90 medium density residential zone. May we have an introduction from staff?
Yes, if the tech team could pull up page 13. The Queen Anne style residence at 102 Chestnut Street is zoned R90 medium density residential. It is contributing to the Chestnut Mean Historic District. The application comes before the HDC in accordance with section 24-227 of the City Code. The applicants, Philip and Megan Wessel, have submitted a historic area work permit application requesting the HDC approve the expansion and reconstruction of the front porch. If we can go to page 14, please. The Chestnut Meme Historic District guidelines apply. Under house design elements, the first bullet, new, additional, and replacement construction work on existing houses should be compatible with the style descriptions of the contributing resources. Page 15, please. Under materials, the second bullet, deteriorated historic features shall be repaired rather than replaced. Where the severity of deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature, the new feature shall match the old in design, texture, and other visual qualities, and where possible, materials. Replacement of missing features shall be substantiated by documentary, physical, or pictorial evidence. And next page, page 16, please. For porches, it reads, the open front porches contribute to the open feeling in the area. The first bullet, front porches, including wraparound, should be open. They may not be enclosed or screened in. And next bullet, porches should have appropriate railings and or columns if part of the original design. And last bullet, side porches, if not part of a wraparound porch, may be enclosed and made into living space. Next page, page 17, please. And finally, under new construction, under additions at the bottom, new work must harmonize with the character and scale of the existing house. The new work shall be differentiated from the old. It shall be compatible in height, scale, materials, elevations, texture, color, and details. And now, if we can go to the next page, page 18, I will turn it over to Phil Wessel, the applicant, so he can present his plans.
Good evening, commissioners.
Welcome, Phil. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you very much. Happy to be here. This evening, I want to just very briefly walk through what I hope is a fairly straightforward and self-explanatory bit of work at our house on Chestnut Street. If you could go to page 20, please. As you can see from the photos, we have an existing porch on the house. I believe the fact that there's a porch there is obviously original to the house. The framing and likely the posts that are there now are not. It's all constructed out of pressure treated lumber that is failing. And more importantly, there is actually little to no foundation on the porch at all. The outside the front outside corner there that you can see in image 2 and image 3 is actually settled probably about 8 inches, 6 to 8 inches, causing the whole roof to sort of droop. You can see a little bit, I don't know if you can tell, but in the image on photo 1, the whole front corner of the porch has sagged. This really became noticeable when we took out some overgrown azalea bushes in anticipation of this project. You can really see that there actually is no foundation there for really anything. And so what we're looking to do is replace and repair this and make a slight expansion to the front. The main purpose behind the expansion is so that the porch is actually usable, so you can sit out there. You can sort of see in image 2, we've got 2 rocking chairs there that are turned parallel to the face of the house. And the main reason is that when you face them out like you would when you're sitting, you can't actually walk without practically stepping off the porch. It's a very shallow porch, maybe 5 feet at most. And so our goal here, if you go to the next page, please, our approach is a number of things. One, the existing sort of flagstone and concrete steps, the flagstones delaminating and not in the greatest of condition. So we're going to remove those concrete stairs in their entirety. They're not really, there's no flagstone anywhere else on the property except those like 4 stairs. So it's really sort of an odd element that we're going to remove and replace with wood frame stairs and railings to match the expanded porch. The roof is going to remain in the exact same footprint. We're not taking the roof off. The plan is to support it in place while we rebuild the deck and the porch underneath it. The basic footprint of the porch is the same, except for the sort of trapezoid shaped bump out there to the left of the stairs. And we looked at a number of different options for that to give us some breathing room and to make the front porch a little bit more useful. We looked at squaring it off. And frankly, this was an attempt to sort of mirror the geometry of the bay window on the right, and add a little bit of interest while also not pinching the front stairs. And just sort of as you're walking up the walkway, have the porch sort of pushed back a little bit to make it a little bit more of an inviting entry. The only other significant change architecturally is the elimination of one of the center porch posts. Right now, the posts, if you go back to page 20, there is a center porch post. There are sort of 4 posts dividing it into 3 equal areas. We're keeping the sort of proportion, except by eliminating that center porch post, you have sort of a 2/3, 1/3 balance. And again, the sole reason for that is to make the porch usable to sit out and be able to walk around without having a porch there. We laid it out both ways and looked at it to see whether keeping the post was workable, and just from a circulation standpoint, it's still not ideal. So from a material standpoint, again, the approach is, and actually maybe I think it's the next, I think it's 2 more pages. Elevations are pretty straightforward. Maybe 1 more. I've got some material photos in the end. Yep, this is it. For the railings and posts, we'll be using sort of wood railings, wood posts painted in a similar manner to what we have on the side porch. For the decking, I'm requesting to be able to use composite decking, not mainly for durability, especially since a portion of the porch would be sticking outside of the roof, and so it's got much more sun and rain exposure. The intent from a material standpoint is to find something that is in the grayish brown family. I've got a piece of Timber Tech here that's in the neighborhood of what we're looking at. Not a fake wood, brown or something that's meant to look like teak, something that, from the street would blend in and you really wouldn't know that it's any different than a painted wood. So that's in essence the project, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Wonderful, thank you.
Excellent job.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak for or against this application? We have nobody who's interested.
See no one.
I
You know-
would say though, we should let the public know how to participate if
Okay.
they'd like to, just in
All right,
case.
all right. To indicate that that's great suggestion. To indicate that you want to make a comment, if you're on a computer or laptop, move your mouse to the bottom center of the Zoom window, and you should see a raise hand button pop up. Click on that button and then we can call on you. If you're dialing in on telephone, please press *9 to raise your hand. No one? Okay, very good. All right. Then I guess let's go to the commission. So I guess Mary and Joe, would you like to have any thoughts or questions?
Phil, I was wondering, besides the structural reasons for the porch itself and the condition it's currently in, were there also any structural reasons for the extension besides the room?
No, I mean, it really is to make the porch actually usable. I mean, that's, our house over on Brooks, one of the things that we liked and actually miss about living there the most is the ability to actually sit out on the front porch. And before it really wasn't usable because of the bushes, but also just because of the depth it makes having, 2 or 3 people comfortably sitting out there very, very tight.
Yeah. Well, that was my only question. I may have some statements later, Dean, if the other commissioners would like to ask any questions.
Okay, Commissioner Feinstein?
Yes, I have a couple questions. With the removal of the column in the center, have you analyzed whether the depth of the beam that's going to span now from the 2 columns, is that going to have to enlarge or change at all to change the fascia?
I'm gonna look at that. I mean, the overall span, even with that removed, is only on the neighborhood of like 10 feet tops. I mean, I forget the exact dimension that's on the plan. It's actually not an extensive span, and it looks like there's at least a 2x6 or a 2x8 up there now. My assumption is we may have to sister that up to the inside, but it shouldn't need to get deeper. From an exterior elevation perspective, it shouldn't need to get deeper.
Okay, because I think that would be critical, obviously, from an aesthetic standpoint.
Yep.
Second question is more of a, it's what you're proposing to do in terms of extending the porches is innovative. I've actually not seen it on a similar style building where it extends out beyond the covering for the porch itself. And I was wondering if you knew of any examples or prototypes.
Not
or
on
precedents.
Yeah, not on necessarily this particular type of architecture. I did spend some time researching porches, and the National Park Service has a couple of technical documents on porch preservation. And there are some examples, and I don't have them off the top of my head. I did see some examples of porches on older houses that did have an extension or where people added them, but it wasn't, necessarily a Queen Anne style, similar architecture. But where there were either porches or patios where you had a roof stop at one point, but it extended out beyond it. I mean, in an ideal world, in a perfect world, my initial thought was to extend the roof as well and basically just make the porch deeper. But that, when you look at the building architecture, that creates a whole host of problems because this porch roof is sort of tied very nicely into the 2 outside corners of both of the bay windows. And so, and it's also a hip roof. So it's got on that one outside corner, it's got, it slopes in both directions. So my one thought, if it had been a normal straight sloping roof, you just extend the front slope out. But really, to do anything with this roof, A, you'd have to take the whole roof off and reframe it from scratch. And B, it would be really tricky to maintain the alignment over on the sort of the left side of the porch in image 2, where it ties into that outside corner. So we struggled with trying to weigh a whole bunch of different things here. I mean, our starting position was let's make the whole porch rectangular and bump it out a couple feet, and then that started, it was like tugging at the edge of the sweater. It started unraveling a whole bunch of other issues trying to just make it straightforward and just a straight expansion.
Yeah, no, it's a challenging project with, you know, and I understand, I'm sympathetic towards how you solved it and the relationship of the shaping of the porch as it relates to the adjacent bay makes sense. I'm just trying to, in my head, kind of imagine, I know you have the rendering, which does it a little bit, but whether or not that's gonna, from the street, which is obviously much further away, whether that's gonna bump, that little projection is gonna appear kind of off a little bit, or whether it'll just blend in.
My sense is from the street, given the height of this, that what you're gonna see in elevation is the railings, right? You're not gonna
Mhm.
see the porch floor is low enough that you're really not gonna read that massing. You're just gonna see the horizontal band of the railing. And whether the railing is straight across or whether it has the kink in it for the bump out, at least from the Chestnut Street elevation, I don't think you'll see it hardly at all. From meme, you'll see it, you know, some as you're sort of 90 degrees to it. But if you're at the corner or sort of oblique to it, I don't think, I mean, my 2 cents is it's not going to stand out a ton, because that horizontal line of the railing is what you're going to see more than the fact that it's canted and bumped out a little bit.
Mhm. And okay, I mean, those are the questions I had. Thank you.
And that is the other thing I sort of failed to mention. We are adding a railing here. The existing porch doesn't have one. It's technically legal without one, but it's not comfortable without one.
No, I think that works.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan?
I just want to piggyback from Mark regarding taking up the center post. I understand that you're keeping the fascia very tight, and you're replacing concept. If you look at the profile of the existing building, you go back to look at the existing image 2. If you look at the fascia, the size of it, the depth, and by removing that center post, are you saying that you're gonna keep that depth as tight as possible? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that depth will not get deeper.
Okay.
It won't get deeper this way. That beam will likely get fatter. I'm gonna have to add a piece to it, but
Okay. All right.
it'll get
Okay.
fatter in towards the porch. So in elevation, you won't be able to tell a difference.
Okay. So you're kind of improvising. It's offset. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also, I mean, we're gonna see when I get in there and see what the framing's like. There's a chance we may not need to do much of anything, just because it's a relatively short span on that beam.
Okay. All right. The second issue I have is the railing. You said there's no railing, but you look on the stairs. Are you copying what is on the stairs? Are you taking it around the porch?
What's on the stairs? Yeah, what's on the stairs is not at all historically appropriate. It's all square railing, surface mounted, and you know, I guarantee you did not come before this commission for approval. The idea is to use a railing picket that's turned, that is in the same sort of architectural language as the columns and is similar to the railing on the side. So
yeah, I saw that. It looked good. I saw it. The only thing I'm trying to reconcile with your presentation and the materials that you selected to try to stay within the requirements. Everything, you're trying to stay with everything and make sure everything matches the existing, but then the composite decking, I'm still struggling with that. I mean, is it possible to find other alternative that I understand your reason is the durability of the product. Is it possible to look at other wood products that has durable and so you retain the entire alteration or wood within that requirement?
Yeah. So
it is something that I'm trying to reconcile with the whole thing. You try to make thing, but then the decking is composite.
Yeah, no, that's totally understandable. I think when it comes to decking, you know, especially historic decking, you know, there really are only 2 options. It's either wood and paint it or composite, because you know, any of the quote unquote durable decking woods, the ipes, the teaks, the tropical woods that you use in a more modern residence would look totally out of place here on a house like this, aside from the fact that they're also not low maintenance. And so it's, you know, I know there are a multitude of other properties in the historic district that have used similar composite decking for the front porch, and it is sort of a compromise. It's, you know, from a you know, public appearance, public right of way standpoint, it maintains the look and feel of the house.
Okay.
And you know, it is a compromise, but it's one that I think is reasonable.
All right. I
in the
have
eyes
two
of
more.
something that can be maintained long term.
Okay, I have two more question. The stairs, are you using the same composite material on the
Yep.
stairs? Okay.
Yeah, it'll all be the same.
The size of the plank, is it matching existing
The size of the what
of the composite decking? The size of the plank.
Yeah, the existing plank is, I think it's about 6 inches wide. It's
Mhm.
it's not proper deck boards. It's too thin, which is part of why it's failing. And B, it's not original because it's pressure
Okay.
treated. So it's been installed in the last, you know, 30, 40 years. But
Okay.
it's about the same way. We're gonna run the plank in the opposite direction. One
Mhm.
of the many flaws of the existing construction is everything is run in the wrong direction that it should be.
Yeah.
So we're gonna the plank is gonna run lengthways, but it's about the same width.
Okay. We expect you to make the appropriate correction. Okay. All right. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. All right, I'm next and last. I have to agree with everything everybody said so far. I'm not a big fan of the thicker floor deck, the decking. Does it only come in an inch and a half, like 2x6?
No,
Or
this is 1 inch.
So that's what you're going to use?
Yeah,
I'm sold.
it's timber tech. It's a standard. It's either inch or inch and an eighth. It's not.
Okay, that's perfect. All right, now I can tell you this, some composite wood boils in the sunshine. So just be aware of that. Does your front face south?
Yes, it does. But we're looking at timber tech, and this has a 50-year fade and stain warranty, polymer cap. So I'll double check that with the manufacturer, but this is a little higher end than the normal, you know, Home Depot stuff.
Well, yeah, the thickness looked great, so I'm happy with that. And this has nothing to do with our purview, but I'm just saying that a lot of people find out the hard way that they can't walk out on the deck in the summer sun. You just can't. It's that hot. Some of the products. I'm not saying that is or it isn't. Just be forewarned. And again, it's not our business. I'm not a big fan of the way that you have the bump out as I guess a partial octagon or partial hexagon or whatever. I don't think I've ever seen that anywhere on such a small space. Now I can tell everybody and they will realize that on the old Victorians, they'll use a large octagon on the corner of a deck that wraps around the house. So it's not without precedent from that. It's a little bit unusual to put it in this particular way. I think that if I had my choice, I'd rather square it off, but I'm not that concerned. I do agree that from the road, it's not going to make that big of an impact. But one of the things that I am hoping that you'll say yes to is, are you planning on taking down that column and placing it in your attic? Would that be something that you could do? Because what
I will say that, and we'll see when I take these down. When I had the columns on the side porch down a few years ago, when we replaced the slab, they are definitely not original. They're hollow.
Really?
No. And so we'll see these. You can see an image too. The bottoms of these have rotted out and have been sort of Dutchmaned in. I'll take a look at them. If they look like they're actual old growth original, I'll save them. But my suspicion is these are probably 30, 40-year-old, you know, build home center replacements.
Because here's what I'm getting at. I think what you're doing isn't harming the house at all. So I'm thinking that, particularly because you're keeping the roof. So if somebody who buys this after you, or if you have a change of mind or whatever, they could always put it back if they have the material. But trying to find that tracery that actual cut area, tends to make me believe that it'll be so hard to find that they will never do it. But if they wanted to have it and it's sitting in the attic and wanted to go back to the original look, that would be helpful to them. It's not a major issue. I also like the idea that you're not changing the roof, because I think if you do add the bump out that mimics the plan bump out, I think that'll change the look of the architecture significantly. So I would not be for doing that. So that's it. Those are my only thoughts. Commissioners, open forum. Everybody just jump in with any other last thoughts or concerns.
You left out John.
Oh my God, forgive me, John. I always go last. That's why I wrapped it up. I didn't have a check mark next to you, John. I'm so sorry. John, please.
It's quite all right. All my questions have been answered, so I'll just offer my comment now, and it's going to be brief. Mr. Wessel, I applaud you for the detail, the level of detail you've put into resurrecting your porch. And I think you'll find, if this current year is anything like the last, you will really appreciate how good a porch is, how many uses you can put to it, how many meetings, how many dinners, lunches, whatever. It makes a big difference.
Yep, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And you can face the rocking chairs out.
Yep.
Any other further thoughts? And I apologize, John. Forgive me. Any other further? Yes, Mary Jo.
Okay, so now it's for my comment time. I want to say that personally, I have really struggled with the deck not being original wood and also changing the porch. But I will preface that with saying, well, first, let me stick with the wood porch. It does look different, and when you're on it and you're coming up it and the whole thing. But at the same time, I understand that porches are the most common part of the house to rot first. My husband and I are on round 2 when it comes to our porch, and we've been here for 35 years, going on 36 this year. Also, the bumping out and changing it. And I thought about that. I really struggled with those two things. But I don't believe we have in the record an original picture of the house.
I've looked everywhere.
Yeah. And if someday it would be nice if we did. I understand that it would be probably best for the house overall to have a material that's less maintenance. It's clearly a quality product you brought before us this evening in your application. And we really appreciate that, Phil, because you've been so good about every detail. It makes it straightforward and easy to look at. So I just wanted to say that I was struggling with those two issues. And of course, I don't like the idea of the column being removed, even if it's not original. But it makes sense. And as Dean pointed out, it can be put back together someday if someone so desires. But we don't even know if this porch resembles what it was in the beginning anyway. So that's all I have to say about that. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. Any other commissioners want to throw in some thoughts? Okay, I see none. So may I have a motion to approve with or without conditions or deny this application?
I move that we adopt the staff recommended approval that the Historic District Commission, based on the exhibits submitted, the applicant's testimony, and the staff report, findings and recommendations, grant HIST-8787-2021 front porch replacement and alterations, finding it to be in compliance with section 24-227.2 of the city code.
Okay, anyone second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I'll take a roll call for vote. Say aye if you support the motion, nay if you don't, abstain if you wish. Commissioner LaFrance,
Aye.
Commissioner Feinstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan,
Aye.
Commissioner Roddy,
Aye.
and Commissioner Ventola says aye. So it's 5-0. Congratulations. Motion passes. Congratulations.
Phil.
Very much, commissioners.
Yes, Mary
Dean,
Jo.
one more thing. I don't think this was something disclosed worthy, but I did want all of you to know that when I helped the neighborhood come together with the historic guidelines for our district, porches was my baby.
Ah.
And so I was the one that came up with the ideas for our personal Chestnut Meme Historic District guidelines for porches.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for doing that for us, and the community thanks you. And Phil thanks you, don't you,
Yes, I
Phil?
do. Thank you very much.
All right, very good. All right, next then on our list is we have a resolution, specifically the 414 East Diamond Avenue's designation petition resolution. Before we begin, did all the commissioners have a chance to read the resolution? Say nay if you didn't. Everybody did? Okay. And did everybody have a chance to read the letter from the owner's attorney that came in today? Say nay if you didn't. Okay, so everybody's got that. Okay, good. All right, may we then have an introduction from staff?
Yes, if the tech team can pull up page 61, please. So as Chair Ventola noted, staff received an email with attachments from attorney Stuart Barr last night. So the packet was reposted this morning to include those items that are found on pages 72 through 95. Just a summary, at its January 27th, 2021 meeting, the HDC majority voted to direct the city manager to withhold issuance of the demo permit for the building at 414 East Diamond Avenue. That was demo 23332-2020. It was withheld for 4 months in accordance with section 24-231D2 of the city code. The HDC, said the building met a number of the criteria for historic designation that are listed under section 24-226B of the city code. The process to designate any property or area begins with a separate petition to the mayor and city council by the property owner, historic district commission, or the planning commission. If the mayor and city council decide to pursue the designation process, that would then include notice and a public hearing among the mayor and city council, planning commission, and HDC, followed by recommendations from the planning commission and the HDC to the mayor and city council for the final decision. The HDC's criteria for review is limited to section 24-226B in making its recommendation, but the mayor and city council and planning commission are not so restricted, and they can consider other significant factors, such as the applicable master plan, economic development plans, and the city's overall best interests. And as noted, the mayor and city council has the final and sole authority to designate a property as historic. So staff prepared a draft resolution for the HDC to petition for the local designation of 414 East Diamond Avenue. Should the HDC approve the resolution and the mayor and city council accept the petition, the triple public hearing for the property is tentatively scheduled for Monday, April 5th during the mayor and city council meeting. To conclude, staff maintains its position that the building at 414 East Diamond Avenue lacks the architectural and historic significance under section 24-226B to merit historic designation, and does not believe 414 East Diamond has the reasonable probability for historic designation. Are there any questions?
Nope, I don't have any for you. Anybody? Yes, Mayor Joe.
Well, I have a couple of things. Is this the proper time for me to say my couple of things?
Well, what we do is go to the public next, and
Okay.
then we'll go to the commission. So the public is now invited to speak, which includes the building's owners and their attorneys if they so desire to speak. To indicate that you want to make a comment, if you're on a computer or laptop, move your mouse to the bottom center of the Zoom window, and you should see a raise hand button pop up. Check on that button, and then we can call on you. If you're dialing in on a telephone, please press *9 to raise your hand.
We see Stuart Barr has his hand raised.
Okay. Can you hear us, Mr. Barr?
Yes,
Okay, introduce yourself. Give us just your position, and you don't, if you're the attorney, state that, and you don't have to just tell us what law firm you're with, and then you can begin speaking.
well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm not on video then. And
We
that's
don't see you. We don't see you.
okay. That's fine. I put on a coat and tie. I want that in the record.
Very good.
And
I'm hearing
thank,
as a cat.
Well, down at the bottom, if you're on Zoom, down at the bottom, there is a button, bottom left, that you can click on to have Zoom, or I mean video, and then also click on one separately for audio. So your audio obviously is on. Could you try click on the video link on the bottom left?
I apologize. I'm not seeing the video button, but that's okay.
Huh. Okay.
All right. Well, in any event, good evening, everyone. It is good to be with you, at least by audio. And thank you again for giving me the opportunity to put on a coat and tie, but I guess it didn't matter after all. But I am Stuart Barr with the law firm Early and Brewer. Diego Uruburu, the executive director of Identity, was also supposed to join. I'm not sure if he had connectivity problems, but he was also going to try to join this evening, but that's okay. I'm going to speak for Identity tonight. Identity has asked our firm to assist with its property at 414 East Diamond Avenue. And as an aside, if you're not familiar with Identity already, I would encourage you to learn more about their organization and the great work that they do. It's really, really terrific. As was mentioned, we submitted a letter yesterday concerning tonight's proposed resolution. And I think everyone indicated they had a chance to review it. I do appreciate the quick turnaround on that review. I'm going to go through it this evening, and I understand that the commission has already met a couple of times about this property recently. We reviewed those meetings, and I thank the commission for the opportunity to be heard now at this stage in the process. As staff discussed before you this evening is a proposed resolution to petition the mayor and council for historic designation of the property at 414 East Diamond. Obviously, that proposed resolution and petition have the potential to create a significant impact to our client's property, particularly since Identity expected the city to issue a demolition permit of what is now a condemned building because of the fire damage. Ideally, Identity wants to demolish the building and move forward with its plans in order to continue the good work that it is doing in the city to serve the Gaithersburg community. We ask you to vote no on the proposed resolution this evening and to not submit the proposed petition for historic designation to the mayor and council. We ask you to do that because under the applicable standard, there is not a reasonable probability that the mayor and council will in fact designate this property historic. The reasonable probability standard is a different standard from what I'll describe as the ordinary standard. The ordinary standard, which is under the usual condition when a demolition permit is not pending for a property, just asks the commission to determine how the commission feels about a particular property and the historic designation criteria. Under the ordinary standard, again, when we're not in the demolition context, the HDC can look at any property at any time and consider whether it has historic value and whether it meets the historic designation criteria from the HDC's perspective, and based on that, determine whether the HDC wants to petition the mayor and council for potential designation. By comparison, the reasonable probability standard in the demolition context asks the HDC to, yes, consider how the commission feels about a particular property and the historic designation criteria. That's certainly part of it, but more broadly asks the HDC to consider the entire historic designation process and project as best as possible, not what the commission recommends to happen or what the commission prefers will happen, but what in fact is likely to happen at the end of that process. The reasonable probability standard necessarily involves looking at the entire process, including who are all the parties, what are their roles, what are their positions on potential designation, if that's known, who makes the ultimate decision, who has an advisory role, what is the overall context beyond just the HDC's perspective of the property, along with any other factors that may be relevant besides potential historic value. We do not believe that reasonable probability can be found in this instance, and thus the proposed resolution tonight should not be adopted, and the petition for historic designation should not be sent to the mayor and council. So why do we believe that historic designation is not reasonably probable? Well, let's look at the entire designation process and try to assess what is reasonably probable under these circumstances. As we know, the mayor and council have ultimate decision-making authority on historic designation. I'm not aware of any direct evidence one way or the other of how the mayor and council feel about this particular property when it comes to potential designation. But I think it's important that the mayor and council have not appeared, at least to my knowledge, to have expressed any interest in historic designation or made any attempt to designate this property historic. Or at least, again, I'm not aware of anything in that regard. Also, it's instructive to note that the mayor and council adopted the 2018 Historic Preservation Master Plan. In that plan, this property is listed under a category of properties described as, quote, other resources of note. There's a separate list of properties in the master plan specifically identified as, quote, potential historic resources. This property is not on that list of potential historic resources. Now, I'm not dismissing the possibility that the properties listed under other resources of note could be designated historic. But again, we are trying to apply the standard and assess what is reasonably probable. And I would think we can all agree that it is more probable that the properties listed as potential historic resources will in fact be designated than the properties listed under other resources of note. Again, that's the mayor and council adopted master plan. Now, turning to the planning commission. The planning commission has an advisory role in the process. And again, there's no direct evidence of, to my knowledge, of how the planning commission feels in this particular instance. At the same time, I'm not aware of any planning commission expression of interest in historic designation or any attempt to do that. The planning staff also has an advisory role, and as you know, and as the planning staff just reiterated, it is against designation. Staff has explained its position fully and comprehensively, and you're aware of all that, and I won't go through it this evening. The property owner also is against designation for all the reasons Identity has explained, which leaves the HDC, which also has an advisory role in the process. When I watched the January 27th meeting, I think it is fair to say that the HDC is divided when it comes to this property on the question of its historic value and whether it meets the historic designation criteria. I'm not going to get into the substance of the historic designation criteria this evening, but suffice it to say we agree with the planning staff and believe that this property does not meet the criteria. But the fact that the HDC is divided on that question is important. And to summarize the ultimate conclusion based on the applicable standard, we believe that when you start with the fact that the HDC is divided, at least to some degree, on the question of designation to begin with, add the fact that the planning staff is opposed to designation, add the fact that the property owner is opposed, add the fact that the property has never been nominated previously and is not on the list of potential historic resources in the master plan, add that there's no suggestion that the planning commission or mayor and council have ever expressed any interest in designation or taken any steps in that regard, and then add in the fact that the building is currently condemned because of the fire damage. And we do not believe it is in the city's interests, and we do not believe that the mayor and council will want to prolong continuation of a condemned building. When you add all of that up, then I think the only conclusion is that historic designation under the circumstances is not reasonably probable. So because of that, we ask the commission to vote no on tonight's proposed resolution and petition. Thank you for considering our position. I'm happy to have a discussion or take questions, and I'll try to find the video button if I can. So thank you again.
Well, thank you, Mr. Barr. Appreciate that. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Yes, Mr. Uriburu has his hand raised.
Okay. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Welcome back. How are you?
Thank you, everyone. I just want to echo what our attorney mentioned. I also want to state that I am not the owner. The owner is a nonprofit organization, and therefore the building belongs to the community, not to me. We have tried to explain before, and I'll try it again, the damage that the prolonged decision brings about to identity when we're in the middle of a pandemic that is affecting the community that we work with the most. Hundreds of people who were our clients have died, and we want to dedicate the limited resources that we have, both financial and human resources, to really providing services to this community when it needs it the most. So I urge the commission to please vote no, and to please give us the demolition permits. That's all I have to say, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak from the public?
I see no one else with their hands raised.
Okay, very good. All right. Next then, before we go to the commission, what I'd like to do is read into the record a statement. It's really from the city code. There's two parts to it. Bear with me, please. All right, this is under City Code Section 24-231, which has been cited by the owner's attorney, or the attorney who wrote the letter, however you want to label them, owner or not. Anyway, there were several things that came up in the letter that I do want to address when it is my time. I want to explore many of the points in the letter, and I'll save that for my time. But to read into the record, it goes as follows. For Section 24-231, demolition procedures for non-designated buildings and structures. Prior to issuance of demolition permit, the Historic District Commission shall review each structure or building 50 years old or older for potential historic or architectural significance under the criteria specified in Section 24-226. 24-226, as you guys already know, is the list of items that we find are pertinent to this project. That is for historical, cultural significance, or architectural design significance. And we did say those things at the last meeting. I believe I gave a list. Mayor Joe, you did. To continue on to Section 24-231, which is significant because that is what the Mr. Barr, the attorney, is presenting most of his items on. Under item D of 24-231, it says the Historic District Commission may instruct the city manager or designee to. And it is as follows. It says, and I'm going to read the whole thing, and then I'm going to reread it just based on this particular application. The whole thing talks about all kinds of things, sites, group of sites, structures. I'm going to reread it just based on the site. All right, so the whole thing is as follows. And by the way, this is the current city code. I checked it tonight. It is the version, the latest version, which is 10-21-2019. And it is as follows. So under D/2, where the Historic District Commission determines that any site, group of sites, structure, or object is undergoing active consideration as a historic district, a historic site, or historic resource, or has the reasonable probability of being so designated or has been so designated, it may direct the city manager to withhold issuance of any permit to demolish, raid, or substantially alter exterior features or any such site, structure, or object. City manager shall withhold such permit for maximum 6 months from the date of the directive of the commission. Item D2I, Roman numeral I assume. The commission may withdraw its directive to the city manager if it determines that failure to grant the permit applied for will have the effect of denying the property owner all reasonable use of the property, or to cause the property owner to suffer undue economic hardship. Now that's the whole thing in its entirety, but I'm going to reread it just based on the site. And it is as follows. And it's really as it applies to the HDC's decision made on January 27, 2021. Item number 2, in parentheses, where the Historic District Commission determines that any site is undergoing active consideration as a historic site, it may direct the city manager to withhold issuance of any permit to demolish. The city manager shall withhold such permit for a maximum of 6 months from the date of that directive. Under item I in parentheses, I'm going to add one word to clarify where we were on January 27th. It says the commission may, and I'm going to add the word not. Commission may not withdraw its directive to the city manager if it determines that failure to grant the permit will not have the effect of denying the property owner all reasonable use of the property. So my point is on that is we do have, and we had on the 27th, the belief that we were not denying the property owner reasonable use of the property because they could always, like we said on, or like I said on the 27th, that you can build onto it just like City Hall did. The very large addition could be built onto the back of it. But my biggest point on this is it has been discussed in Mr. Barr's letter how that the issue here is reasonable probability of it being designated. And I believe, at least from my vantage point, well, how I'm reading the city code, and I just read it to you guys, that it does not say that. We do not have to judge this property based on reasonable probability. We may, but it says the word or. So again, like I say, it says that the Historic District Commission determines that any site undergoing active consideration as historic district site or resources can withhold, or if it has a reasonable probability of being so designated. That's not a requirement. We could use that, but it's not required. I want to emphasize that. The reasonable probability does not have to be on the table if we don't want it to be, because the code is clear in my vantage point, in my mindset. It's not a requirement when you use the word or. And so I believe that on the 27th, January 27, 2021, we not only followed the law, but we stated the reasons why. And then also going to the idea that we have a split decision. We have a divided HDC vote. Well, 4-1 isn't quite as divided as I would say the word divided is, particularly since the dissenting vote was Mark. And if I'm not mistaken, Mark, you said that this house would have been saved if it was in a historic district. And I don't mean to put words in your mouth, so clarify if that's not correct. Like if it was in a historic district, would you have voted to save it?
Yeah, if this was part of if that whole strip of houses was part of a district.
Right, which is what the Historic District Commission is interested in pursuing. It has nothing to do with this particular property. That is a goal that we have. So anyway, that's what I wanted to read into the record. So now based on that, let's go to the commissioners for your thoughts and your questions. So Commissioner LaFrance.
Okay, so I agree completely and totally what you have said, Dean. I wanted to do a quick refresher of our memory. In December, we were advised from the city staff that all we were to consider when it came to this property was whether it deserved further study. We decided to defer to the January 27th meeting, where further study information had arrived via Judy Christensen. At that time, we decided that it had plausible designation probability. So this is going to take time. We agreed on 4 months. This is going to take time. We're, in my opinion, we are not ready to vote tonight on the proposal for the mayor and council. And I say that because my understanding is that Judy Christian is continuing to do some research. And I also want to ask us, the commissioners, to do our part, if anything that we can do, also research this property. Because I believe once we've applied the petition to the mayor and council, they're going to expect the record we've produced. And our record isn't complete. That's why we've asked for 4 months, so that we can get the photographs. and the other things that needed to be added to the record. So when the mayor and council does look at it, we've completed the research for this property. Am I correct in stating that, Chris Berger?
Well, Chris, you do answer, but here's my thought. Tonight's resolution is really just to send over our statement that this is worth considering for historic designation. And I apologize to you, Chris, please take over and say whether that's correct or not.
I've had zero correspondence with Judy Christensen since the last meeting, so that is news to me that she's doing further research. If this is delayed another month, then the demolition permit will be issued before the mayor and council would have time to make a final action on this.
Wait a
So
minute,
we
what
can't-
happened to our 4 months?
You do have 4 months. It's till the end of May.
Yeah,
Last month, the clock started, so it's the end
Right.
of May. Right now, we have a tight schedule. We have a tentative triple public hearing for April 5th with final action from the mayor and council on May 17th. So delay another month just makes that impossible.
I would not recommend delaying another month, because here's the thing. These 4 months, Mary Jo, are gathering more information. That's what the 4 months is all about.
well, exactly. I just want to make sure that we're not anticipating that the product we're sending out tonight, were we to approve it, is the final product. Does that make
Well,
sense?
no, that's just it. That's what the 4 months is for, is to do further research.
Okay. All right,
Am I-
good.
am I
I just need clarification.
Chris, is that how you understand it?
Yeah, we would have all information available to the planning commission, HDC, and mayor and council ahead of the April 5th triple public hearing, potential
April
public hearing.
5th isn't 4 months. April 5th. So you're saying that our real deadline is April 5th?
Well, earlier than that, to provide any information, we need to have all information available by mid-March to include in the packet for the April 5th meeting.
I want all of you to understand that I'm very concerned. This is why originally I wanted to go with the statute that said no longer than 6 months, because Judy Christensen was very clear on the phone that research takes time.
I will also ask, after the public hearing, the records will remain open. So additional information can be included in the records before they close. There'll be 3 records that'll be included: the HDC's record, the Planning Commission's record, and also the Mayor and City Council's record. So again, after the public hearing, additional information needs to be added. It could be added up until the times the records close.
And what
So
time usually would the record close?
Chris, do we have the tentative?
Yeah, we
what we're
have
thinking?
tentative schedule. Well, the HDC would make their recommendation at their April meeting, which is scheduled for April 28th. So the record would close sometime in the 3rd week of April, tentatively. And the Planning Commission would make their recommendation at the beginning, their first meeting of May, which is May 5th. So their record would
gotcha.
close shortly before then.
Okay, I understand. I think.
Well, I think I now understand a little bit better, is that 4 months is all inclusive, of course, and you need time for the public hearing. So we don't have a full 4 months on the research. I get that now.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, good. I'm
Great.
glad that was clarified.
Anything further?
Well, just that not ever nor ever we will say that our votes have to absolutely be unanimous. Just to touch on what you said, Dean. We
You're
don't
saying
have
you
to have a
recommend that, right?
unanimous vote
Not
by
required.
any rule. Plausibility, outline. Oh, I guess my last thing is I've done a lot over the years since 2007 of commissioner training. And I actually have a 3-ring binder that suggests what we as commissioners should do. And one of those things I'm going to ask the city, and if there's anything we, the commissioners, can do to work with the applicant, I think we can find a compromise where they will feel satisfied that they've been able to use their property as they see fit, and we can save a piece of our city's history. So I'm encouraging the city staff, and I'm volunteering whatever service I can do to help the applicant and us, we come to a compromise that can satisfy at least partially all of our desires in this matter.
Okay, thank you. Anything further?
It's our responsibility. That's it.
Okay. Okay, I didn't mean, I try not to cut you off. If you have further, we can put it in. All right, Commissioner Feinstein?
Oh, yes, I guess I am the lone dissenter, so I was referenced specifically in the attorney's.
Oh, were you trying to hide when I said you're?
No, it's okay.
It's on record, my friend.
I am aware of that. It's in the minutes.
I know, I'm teasing you.
But I do have a question that you brought up, Dean, when you were outing me.
I'm
You
so
did.
sorry. I won't ever do that.
No, you brought up
I
something
really-
that in all seriousness, that I need to understand from probably from the city. You said that the hope was to make this a district. And I need to understand, because that was not my understanding of it. I was looking at this as a individual building, and therefore
We
my
are.
yeah. So
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Keep going. I don't mean to interrupt you.
so while I did say that if this was in a district, therefore it would be a contributing resource of that district, and I agree to that. I still stand by that. However, I do not understand the process of whether this area could be considered at some point and become a district.
That's right.
And is that something that has any realistic pathway forward? And if anybody from the city, Chris, Greg, Frank, if any of you guys can speak to that.
Well, as Mr. Barr alluded to and staff has mentioned in the past, the master planning process is the appropriate time to bring up potential historic resources. And when we did our update to the preservation element in 2016, 2017, this specific property and the other properties along East Diamond Avenue were not mentioned as potential historic resources. And they also were had the same status in the 2003 preservation element. So to answer your question, I don't think the reasonable probability is there for this specific property and the group of properties along East Diamond. Now, that doesn't mean they can't be designated, but according to the master plan, our guiding document, they were not included under the potential historic resources.
Yeah, and I kind of look at it, and as these are, I think, 5 houses in a row or 4 houses in a row that
More than that.
that read together, but across the street, obviously it's different. And then, directly, I guess it'll be to the north, a few houses down, it's or across the street, it's the apartments that are completely, obviously different. So despite the fact that I sympathize with the rest of the commission, I do not see a reason to change my opinion.
Very good. Good. Any further thoughts?
No.
Thank you very much. All right. Commissioner Morgan?
Is that me?
That's you, sir.
Okay. All right. I think by reading the scope and specific section here, 24 231 D, I think it reinforced our decision from the last time we met, and I don't think we want to leave our decision hanging. I love to bring everything to a logical conclusion, so I think it's worth exploring with doing some research, and then if we come to a logical conclusion that this, according to the code, it says site, it says structure or object. Okay, so if we come to a conclusion that the destination cannot be possible, then we'll make a decision. But I think it's worth exploring, because basically if you change this one site or this one building and you set a precedent, so next thing you know, within 20 years or maybe 15 years, that whole block will look different. So and I think that's why our reservation, that's what we're struggling with right now. So basically it says here, the commissioner will reach out to the manager. So that's what we're doing. So I think within a 4 month, let us explore this, do the proper research, and come to a logical conclusion that would benefit everybody. And that's my comment.
Thank you very much. Okay, Commissioner Roddy?
Thank you. I'd like to start with a brief non-substantive comment that my mother would demand that I make. If we could call back to page 60, please, Chris. You will note in the caption that there is a glaring split infinitive. And I would strongly suggest, rather than say to historically designate, we cure that to designate as historic.
Thank you.
Secondly, I would say that I do agree with Chair Ventola, surprisingly enough, on
Wow.
his reading of the code. I think
Now I know I forgot.
It
you.
reinforced, yeah.
I believe his reading of the code is substantially the same as I would read it. And I think the applicant deserves an answer. I think fundamental fairness requires us to take action. And I would have no compunction about moving this through the system to the mayor and council and letting them make the ultimate decision. They may very well agree with the council bar, but let's let them do that.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, anything further?
Nope.
Thank you very much. All right, I'm next and last.
Somebody,
Dean,
Dan,
Did I miss somebody again?
yeah.
I'm sorry? Oh, Frank, yes, sir.
Yes. You have all discussed section 224, 231 D2, and then sending the whatever your decision, if there is a decision to petition the council for to have this site considered for historic designation, there should be some clarity. Your option under subsection D2 is either that the structure was undergoing active consideration. Now, I understand with the demolition permit coming forward to your consideration, at that time, there was active consideration, but many of you, including Mary Jo and the other commissioners, have said there's more research to be done. The intent of the active consideration, because much of this is also follows from what state law provides, meaning that these terms are fairly similar in for other cities that have, and municipalities that have historic district commissions. That is to keep the rug pulled out from under a site that is under active consideration at the time the demolition permit is submitted. I'm not saying there's not evidence of that, but if there is, others have said there's not, so that would be important. If that is not the situation, then whether there is, and I want to look at the exact terms, the reasonable probability does become important. Those would basically be your two options. That's important because it really does need to fit one of the two. It may well be that we'll go through the process, and we can always go through the process, but it's also very likely that that's going to be a key question. And I can tell you what the law says. You all have to decide for yourself, and that's fine. But, just like staff make a recommendation as well. But I also, my role here is to advise you. So I do want to advise you just to be aware between those two considerations, that's going to underscore the basis. Now, that was for holding up the demolition. Your decision here can be more under section 226, but in terms of the background, just so that you're aware of that, and maybe it's not part of the resolution, but would certainly be something that that is likely to come up once this goes to a public hearing. So I just wanted to underscore that because, again, my job is to let you know the way I read it.
Thank you. Mary Jo?
Sorry. Yes, I'm sorry to interrupt again. I know that under our purview is this one property, but discussions have talked about the whole entire block. So do we craft anything having to do with the other properties into what we're doing tonight? And if not, when do we start crafting that into something? Because we're really arguing that 414 is part of a collective, or at least I have been arguing that, yet we haven't really mentioned that collective.
I don't know the answer to that. I guess, Frank, you can help us, but I've always believed since December and then January and even today that we really need to make a decision based on this particular property. I do think that it is important, though, to relay to all, particularly the mayor and council, that we are considering all of those properties. I think there's 6 properties on the north side of 414 that look like it would make a nice district. Those are nice properties. I would hate to see them knocked down, particularly because they can be used and they are used for commercial use. And so I think just like City Hall, you just build the building you were intending to build, just build it towards the back, but maintain the existing house.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's beautiful.
That's the thing I'm saying. It gives both the city's historic structure can get maintained, and the same size building that they were planning on can be added to the back. Save demolition costs anyway, and you get extra square footage on the building anyway. So I am of the mindset that City Hall is an absolutely wonderful example of reusing a building, an historic building for contemporary needs, and having the box-like commercial or industrial look on a building hidden behind these gems or these very nice buildings, I think is a bonus.
And it could face, you could have a face on it that faces Teacher's Way.
Yeah.
So from Teacher's Way, it would look like the front of the building.
Yeah, or just like City Hall, it opens to, when you're facing the building, it opens behind it to the left. And so it would be very similar. It opened out. You can have its own entry on that side, just like City Hall does. But to go back to what Frank was saying, regarding the city code, the reason I read those things I read is because I thought it gave us the legal validation to do what we were doing when we were doing it. And I'll just simply say, going back to 24-231, it says under B, prior to the issuance of each demolition permit, the Historic District Commission shall review each structure or building for potential historic or architectural significance. So the code is telling us, telling everybody, that is an appropriate time to review these buildings. It's in the code. It says we should, not only that it's appropriate, that we must. So reviewing them ahead of time isn't required by the code. Reviewing it at the request is required by the code. So we're essentially meeting the code. And then secondly, going back to section parentheses 2, it says where when the Historic District Commission determines any site is undergoing active consideration. Well, we have been, ever since this was brought before us, can have active consideration for it being designated. And this is going back December. So I believe, again, the code states, as I'm reading it, that what we're doing is proper and when we're doing it is proper. So those are my thoughts on it. But getting back, anybody else want to throw in before I get back to where I was going to be saying? Okay. I don't want to spend too much time on Mr. Barr's letter, but I do want to address it because I'm addressing it for the record. And I think it should be things that, at least from my vantage point, should be stated. I'm only 1 out of 5 on the Historic District Commission, but this is my opinion on it. These are things that I fully believe. In Mr. Barr's items, he presents what I'm referring to as the owner's allegations of facts. On his front page, he states 3 items in a paragraph that he believes are factual reasons to demolish this building. First one is the property is not part of historic district, and to our knowledge, the property has never been nominated previously for historic designation. My point is that's not a requirement from the city code, so we don't have to follow that as a requirement. Second line item is, although the property is listed under other resources of note, which obviously says that the city has some value in them, contained in the city's 2018 Historic Preservation Master Plan, is not included on the list of potential historic resources. Well, again, I state that that's not an issue for us. It's not a requirement that we only designate things that the city has already established are worth designating. That's not in the code. It's not in our requirements. It's not something we have to do. Number 3 is until the current HDC proceedings began, the property owner has never been advised of any intention by anyone at any time to nominate the property. Again, that's not a requirement for us when we consider the designation. It's not something that has jurisdiction over us or requirement over us to do that. Then he goes on and says further, for all the additional reasons explained below, he does 2 additional reasons. And the first one, I put them in two different categories. The first one is owner's additional reasons, which is number 4 and number 5. And then number 4. And then there's the second one is issue of reasonable probability, which I'm saying is number 5. So I'll hit the additional reasons. It says failure to meet applicable designation criteria underlined is as follows. A property designated by the city must possess historic and cultural significance or architectural and design significance. And then he says, based on his review, that they don't agree. Well, we're already on record from last month that we voted 4-1 that the HDC has determined that it has historic and architectural significance. There was a list of, I think, maybe 5 line items that Mary Jo put in, and maybe 3 or 4 that I put in that we cited from 24-226, which is part of our requirement in our review. Getting then to the issue of reasonable probability, I already addressed that, but I'll go further and say that in the second paragraph on page 2, Mr. Barr says no reasonable probability of designation. So that's an underline, that's a statement. And he further says when a demolition permit is pending, the HDC has 2 choices according to section 24-231. It can allow the issuance of the permit. Alternatively, it can determine that there is a reasonable probability that a property will be designated historic. Well, that's not correct in my opinion, based on the code that I read to you guys earlier. It is, once you put in that word or, you have the choice to include it or not. Well, we don't have to include the reasonable probability. We're not required to only designate something or pursue designation for reasonable probability. It's not, it's in the code as not being required. So I have to say I disagree with that belief. Then the next paragraph, which is the third one down on page 2, it says ordinarily the HDC can petition mayor and council for historic designation of any property at any time without impacting a pending permit. Under these circumstances, the HDC need only evaluate the historic designation criteria, see 24226, which is the list of things that we cited on the, it's in the minutes from last month's meeting. By contrast, when a demolition permit is pending for the HDC to postpone the permit, there must be a reasonable probability that the mayor and council will in fact designate the property historic according to 24-231. Well, again, that's not the case. 231 does not say that it must. It says that we can use it as an or, and we're choosing not to. It's not something that is important to us. And then lastly is on the second paragraph from the bottom on page 2, Mr. Barr's letter, it says the reasonable probability standard necessarily involves consideration of more than just the HDC's own evaluation of historic designation criteria, and must consider the balance between historic value and other values. It also necessarily involves consideration of other parties involved in the potential historic designation process, and mayor, council, and planning commission, planning staff, and the property owner. Well, we do take all that into consideration, but the opening statement is that the reasonable probability is, as a standard necessarily involves it, is not, in my opinion, a correct statement. We're not required to do the reasonable probability. And I believe 4 out of 5 of us believed back then, back in December, and again, certainly in January when we voted, that this project, this particular one, as well as its 5 other neighbors on the north side of the street, do appear to be valuable as historic structures to us. Now, I'm going to close my thoughts with 2 other thoughts here, 2 last statements, I should say. And one is the opening of the resolution itself, the Historic District Commission's resolution on it. The opening paragraph says the Historic District Commission, HDC, petitions the mayor and city council to designate 414 East Diamond Avenue as a historic resource for the city. This proceeding constitutes an action pursuant to the city zoning ordinance, chapter 24 of the City of Gaithersburg Code, section 24-226A, that permits the Historic District Commission to petition the mayor and city council to initiate historic designation proceedings. The property is located in the CBD, Central Business District Zone. That tells me that we have the legal authority to pursue this as we've been doing it. And then lastly is, I believe the Historic District Commission has a mandate to save buildings that we believe are valuable to this city. And it is on the city's website, and it just simply states, the Historic District Commission is charged with safeguarding the heritage of the city by preserving sites, structures, or districts that reflect elements of cultural, social, economic, political, archaeological, or architectural history. The commission is also charged with strengthening the local economy and promoting the preservation and appreciation of these sites, structures, and districts for the education and welfare of the Gaithersburg residents. That's our mandate. And I believe that when we see buildings that should be preserved, I believe that as a body, we need to pursue its possible preservation. And then I'll step off my soapbox. So thank you very much. Yes, Frank, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm kind of wondering whether you guys need me in the future at all. And
Always.
maybe, well, we'll see. I'm not so sure. But that'll be a separate question that we will take a look at. But I do, some of the comments made that it's up to you whether to follow certain language or not. If it's in the code, the fact that it says or does not necessarily mean or not. Again, it is not worth arguing about whether or not there was a basis for the demolition to be held up, because you've already made that decision. But I would underscore in terms of clarity that 231 D2 doesn't say reasonable probability or not. what it says is that it either has reasonable probability, that is the property, or it's undergoing active consideration. And what I did advise you, just so that you know, because I'm just here to advise you, not here to argue. It doesn't become undergoing active consideration when the demolition permit is submitted. It's true that you have the overall authority and obligation to some extent to take a look at what's going on in the city and to designate properties. But in the context of a demolition permit, there are some different standards because you have a property owner wanting to move forward. And the property owner here is a property owner, as have some of the other demo permits that you all have looked at over the last couple of years. There isn't a designation now. And that's why this is written in a way, the code to say it's either undergoing active consideration and not a matter of starting with the demo permit, but undergoing active consideration at the time or reasonable probability. Again, I just want to underscore that because there's been so much discussion about it. I just think it could be very confusing. But again, the issue tonight is whether to designate, whether to petition the mayor and city council to designate. In all fairness, you all have already made the decision to withhold on the 4 months that's been submitted. And if there's a question, I will be happy to answer it. But with all that was said, I just want to be clear. Look, this is what the code says, and these are the bases that you should use or that I would recommend using for your decision. Again, the decision tonight is more moving forward to the mayor and city council. So if there's any question, I'm happy to answer it.
I have a question for Frank.
Sure.
So that I understand.
Sure.
You're saying at the time of the application, when the application is sent in by the owner or the applicant, and if there's an active consideration already in process,
Right.
then you can take that step. Is that what you're saying?
Mhm.
So right now, what we're doing is there's no consideration in processing actively, right?
Well, that I don't want to say for right now because that's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Let's be fair.
Exactly.
Let's be fair.
Didn't you see his smile? Didn't you see his smile?
You all want to hear from me or not? I'm
We
okay
do.
if not.
We do.
I'm okay if not.
No,
The
no,
way this code
do.
is written is when this comes to you, not after it comes to you,
Yeah.
but
okay.
when it comes to you. And that was in December. That was the first time you all discussed it. If in looking at it in December, you could see, oh, this site is under active consideration. It's already being considered. That would be question A. Again, what's the point of that? And again, this is a very common, certainly for Maryland, but and in other municipalities, to have that specific section. That is to prevent a property from being considered and having an owner come forward and say, I'm going to jump over the hoop. I'm going to get this thing torn down before you all get a chance to finish your process. So if there's been some active consideration to designate an area, then yes, that's what that means. If there's not, then it becomes the reasonable probability, which is certainly, it's a very different standard, but it's one or the other. And again, this is dealing not with your decision tonight, it's dealing with the decision you made in January. So I don't want to belabor it, but in answering your question, Commissioner Morgan, that's really the distinction.
Okay, thanks, appreciate it.
And thank you.
Chair Ventola,
Yes, sir.
I'll bring to your attention that Mr. Barr has his hand raised. It is
Yes,
up to you.
yes, Mr. Barr, yes, please. I think that's wonderful for you to come back and give us your thoughts on my comments. Please do.
Mr.
Rebuttal.
Chair, Mr. Chair, I really appreciate the opportunity to comment on the discussion. I'm going to be a little bit more blunt than Mr. Johnson is being. There is no active consideration. Active consideration within a reasonable interpretation of that section means there's a formal process underway. There's not a formal process underway. You, the commission, are contemplating tonight whether to ask the council to commence that formal process. You are deciding whether to petition the mayor and council to commence the historic designation process. If the mayor and council elect to commence the historic designation process, then there is active consideration. You are correct, Mr. Chair. I did not cite to the active consideration section in my letter because I simply found it inapplicable. So, but you and I are reading the same section, and we are reading the same words, but we are not interpreting it in the same way. But I believe, and I think candidly, Mr. Johnson is implying this, you have one option in order to withhold the demolition permit, and that is to determine that historic designation is reasonably probable. I do, again, and the resolution pending before you this evening makes no mention of active consideration. It uses reasonably probable in multiple places. So if at the end of tonight's discussion, if the HDC determines that it still wants to petition the mayor and council, it must do that on the basis of reasonable probability. We'll take our conversation to the council, but active consideration is not an option. Additionally, the resolution pending before you this evening makes no mention of creating an historic district. So while that may be a potential idea, that is not in the resolution before you. So again, on behalf of Identity, we ask for you to vote no on the resolution. But I guess I'm a little bit torn here because we want, if the HDC, no matter what, is going to ask the council to consider commencing a process, we want that to happen sooner rather than later, so we can go ahead and go to the council.
Sure, understood.
But if again, if the HDC it agrees with us that reasonable probability is the only available basis upon which to withhold the permit and petition the mayor and council, then I ask the HDC to determine to discuss tonight whether in fact there is reasonable probability, because we do not think there is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm looking through, as everyone is speaking, the code for definitions, and there is no definition that talks about active consideration. There are several terms, but active designation is not one of them.
Dean, turn on your video, dear.
I thought I did. I'm so sorry, everybody. I thought I did.
There you go.
Thank you.
Oh, there
Hey, I'm back. I thought I clicked it. I must have not clicked it properly. Anyway, so thank you. Yeah, I'm looking through and I don't see anything on that. I don't know. I mean, I believe that I think it can be read either way. Do we have anything else that we can go to determine the term active consideration? Is there another resource that we can use?
Well, personally, Dean, I think that we should go ahead and petition the mayor and council, and hopefully enough of the research information. I'm personally satisfied with what we have on the property in the way of research, but for those who are not, Judy Christensen is working on some other information for the property. I think we should move forward. As the attorney said, at least it would stop this from dragging on too long. And we do have certain dates that we must adhere to because of the mayor and council meetings on April 5th, and then the close of the record of the third week of April. and then the planning commission, May 5th. So I would encourage all of us tonight to go ahead and hopefully vote to approve the petition and send it forward, and then we will hope for more research to come in. That's what I'm thinking.
All right. Anyone else want to throw any thoughts in, I guess, before we go to a vote? Any thoughts on active participation? People want to comment on that? Yes, sir.
I think you're saying, sir, to me.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
I did advise earlier that based on other similar codes in other cities and the way they are interpreted, active consideration does mean that there needs to be not necessarily a petition already live, but a property under consideration at the time the demolition permit is submitted. And that's what I can offer you. As I said earlier, I'm not sure I'm being all that helpful or that's something you want to hear, but that's my job. That's what I can offer you as to the meeting.
I think we've all established that we're looking at a probability. That's where that fits in that box. And on that basis alone, I think we should move forward. It's the only fair thing to do.
Okay. Okay. So based
everyone
on
else,
the likely probability then.
We're voting on the petition as written, which basically states that.
Right. Okay. All right. So any other further thoughts before we go to vote? No further vote. I mean, no further thoughts. All right. So, so I'll say that the motion at hand is to, I think it's stated as have a resolution that 414 East Diamond Avenue's designation petition resolution should be sent. So that is the motion. Can I have a second?
second.
I'll second it.
All right, so if you support the motion to send it to the mayor and council, nay if you oppose it, or abstain if you wish. Commissioner LaFrance.
Aye.
Commissioner Feinstein.
Nay.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye.
Commissioner Roddy.
Aye.
Commissioner Ventola says aye. So it's 4-1 that we send the resolution to the mayor and council. And it's based on, like Mark said, that it has the reasonable probability of passing. Okay. Mr. Barr, thank you for your input. Thank you for your patience. I guess we're going to send it over. And then the city staff will continue to do the research.
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, I want to thank you again for the time this evening and the opportunity for our firm to be involved in this discussion. I know we're entering the discussion later than we would have preferred. You've already discussed this property in your previous two meetings. And by the way, Mr. Chair, I do recognize your mandate, and I respect that. We have a respectful disagreement on whether this particular standard is met, but do understand the importance of your role within the city, and that that you are the kind of guardian of historic preservation interests. I do understand that, so I just want to recognize that. And again, thank you for the time.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for saying that. These are the hardest part of our job, I think, is when it comes to raising a historic building. It's the hardest thing I think we do on our commission. So thank you for all of that, and thank you for your patience. Okay, all right. Next then is anything from staff?
Yes, there was mention earlier about a trading, and that is what we are organizing right now. So I'll send an email shortly, trying to reach out and see if there's availability. It'll be done virtually again this year, likely in May, but we are working on that right now. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much. All right. Greg? Nothing?
Nothing for me tonight. Thanks.
Okay, Frank, anything further?
Not tonight, thank you.
Okay, all right. Next then is the commissioners. Mary, go.
Please, I'm begging you, I need my paper copies. Every single HDC, I would appreciate a paper copy of the record before the meeting. And if there's last minute submissions of an application that may go on to a month or so, I would also like those submissions in writing. The way I process information, it works for me. And I kind of feel empty-handed when we do it this way and I don't have anything in my hand. So please.
I emailed you Friday. I guess you didn't get that email.
Oh, I did not. But yes, from now on, the answer is always going to be yes. Please. Thank you.
Okay, anything further? Any, Mark? No, Rudy?
No.
John?
Nope.
Nothing for me. All right, we are hereby adjourned, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.